Welcome to this explainer. Most of us just assume our thoughts are, well, completely limitless. But what if they actually fit into a very specific set of tools? Today, we're going to completely upgrade your mental acuity. We're diving into the cognitive frameworks developed by memory expert Anthony Metivier, breaking down the 10 main types of thinking and showing you exactly how to use them to process the world a whole lot better.
But first, we've got to tackle a really common assumption. Are there as many types of thinking as there are people? I mean, it's a nice poetic thought, right? But as Metivier points out, making statements like that actually demonstrates pretty poor thinking. The truth is, our cognitive styles are absolutely not infinite. They're actually limited to a very specific set of genres that we all share.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of this agenda as a highly structured map of the human mind that we're going to navigate together. We'll cover the myth of infinite thoughts, analyzing and evaluating ideas, abstract and concrete evidence, navigating problems and solutions, the inner mirror, and finally, mastering your mental toolbox. So, Section 1, the myth of infinite thoughts. Let's clarify what we're actually analyzing today.
To truly master mental sharpness, we absolutely have to separate our terms. See, there's a distinct difference between types of thinking, which are the 10 cognitive genres or modes of thought, and methods of thinking, which are the ways we apply and practice them, like writing or debating. Today, our focus is on mastering those 10 distinct types first.
Moving on to Section 2, analyzing and evaluating ideas. Let's meet the evaluators.
First up in this group is critical thinking. Now, this is all about assessing information objectively to make informed decisions and avoid biases. Metivier shares this great example from his own life. He runs a YouTube channel with over 170,000 subscribers. And as you can imagine, that means he gets plenty of, let's call them, colorful disagreements in the comments. But when people respond to his analysis with a personal attack, his critical thinking kicks right in. He instantly spots the ad hominem structure of the attack, which allows him to keep his cool instead of getting defensive.
And this brilliantly illustrates a real superpower of critical thinking. It helps you divide the content of ideas from the form they take. You can literally extract legitimately valuable content even if the form of delivery is totally hostile or angry, simply because you've got the objectivity to separate the two. Then we have analytical thinking. So if critical thinking evaluates the value of information, analytical thinking breaks that information down into smaller parts to examine the thought process itself. Analytical thinkers demand research. Metivier actually defeats his own memory biases by hosting collaborative conversations with other memory scientists on his show. By zooming in and examining multiple perspectives, he gains this incredible wealth of examples and connections.
To quickly summarize this pairing, critical thinking is about evaluating the big picture to determine its objective worth and filter out bias. Analytical thinking, on the other hand, is zooming all the way in to dissect those structural components and find out exactly how those parts work together.
All right, Section 3, abstract and concrete evidence. Let's look at the evidence seekers.
Let's look at how abstract thinking actually begins. It starts entirely with arbitrary symbols. For example, there's literally no physical reason why the shape of the letter A should make the sound we give it in English. It's totally abstract. Based on Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development, kids start grasping these symbolic abilities early, but true abstract reasoning really takes off between ages 7 and 11, and it just keeps developing throughout our lives.
Now on the flip side is concrete thinking. This is literal thinking. It's the absolute insistence on asking the who, what, when, where, and why. A concrete thinker is not going to accept a vague claim. They demand substantial, specific evidence. If you want to build this exact skill, Metivier actually suggests studying debate prep or diving into classical texts on rhetoric, like Rhetorica ad Herennium, which actively trains you to point out exactly when someone else lacks concrete proof.
Notice the inherent friction between these two modes. Abstract thinking lets you play with philosophy, game theory, and deep visualization, but concrete thinking acts as the anchor. It demands literal proof to back up those wild claims. And to function at a really high level, you absolutely need both. Section 4, navigating problems and solutions. It's time to introduce the problem solvers. To understand our next pairing, we have to look at a crazy, high-stakes scenario, the Apollo 13 NASA crisis. When the crew was in deadly danger and desperately needed energy, their survival required two distinct types of thinking. First, someone used divergent thinking, brainstorming wild, nonlinear ideas, and suggested using a flashlight.
But since they didn't actually have a flashlight on board, they had to immediately pivot to convergent thinking, forcing themselves to build the absolute best solution using only the limited scrap materials they actually had on the ship.
And this leads perfectly into how we define creativity. Edward de Bono, a real pioneer in the field, said creative thinking is like digging holes laterally rather than merely vertically. You see, creativity isn't magic. It's not pulling something out of thin air. It's about taking the existing dirt, digging a sideways tunnel, and finding a totally unique way to use the processes you already have in front of you.
That is the absolute essence of lateral thinking, tackling problems from different, indirect angles to solve multiple issues all at once. Think about urban planning. If a city has massive traffic congestion, a direct approach is just, well, building more highways. But lateral thinking comes at it sideways. What if you incentivize working from home? You indirectly eliminate the cars, solve the traffic, and reduce pollution, all in one fell swoop.
Moving to Section 5, the inner mirror. Let's look at how we process our internal state. We start here with reflective thinking. Now, this isn't just daydreaming. It's an active, deliberate process of examining past experiences and scientific data to learn from mistakes and gain new insights. But it has a hard requirement. You literally have to set aside dedicated time to unplug from your devices. You need that quiet space to accurately analyze what your past decisions actually mean for your future.
And paired directly with reflection is emotional thinking. A lot of people think being guided by emotions is a flaw, but philosopher Robert C. Solomon published a brilliant work back in 1993 arguing that emotions have their own form of logic. Using your feelings as a springboard doesn't mean your thoughts lack organization. Actually, it wildly enhances your empathy, your relationships, and your complex decision-making.
Finally, Section 6, Mastering Your Mental Toolbox. Now, the crucial point is figuring out your own profile.
So how do we transition from just knowing these types to actively using them? Well, finding your unique thinking type requires examining your personality, your childhood development stages, and your emotional intelligence. Consider the ocean model, the big 5 personality types. Are you high in openness? Are you highly conscientious? By breaking down your personality traits, you can figure out exactly which thinking styles you default to and which ones you really need to work on.
But look, just knowing your type isn't enough. Remember the difference between types and methods we discussed at the start? To truly speed up your mental processing, you must schedule consistent, deliberate practice. You have to take these 10 modes of thought and push them through dedicated methods: writing, studying, mind mapping, discussing, debating, and meditating. We've mapped out the incredible landscape of human cognition today. We've seen how to evaluate truth, solve impossible problems laterally, and reflect deeply on our own emotions. But the most important question is the one left for you. Which of these 10 thinking tools will you actively choose to sharpen today to upgrade your mind? Find your method, pick a genre of thought, and get to work.